Welcome to the Chain Effect Podcast, where a physical therapist and a dietitian married with 2 kids juggle the struggle of running a business, raising a family, and prioritizing our own health, all while trying to have as much fun as possible.
We are your hosts, Taylor Pope, Doctor of Physical Therapy, and
Caroline Pope, Registered Dietitian.
Together, we own and operate a health facility bringing together physical therapists, dietitians, personal trainers, and active recovery services to create what we call the Chain Effect. Whew, a little bit sore today, not gonna lie.
I know.
We did a 14-hour kettlebell course at our gym. We hosted it at our gym. The course was put on by it was a functional kettlebell training certification, and it's part of the pain-free performance specialist certification business designed by Dr. John Russin. And this course is put together by Clifton Harsky. It was awesome.
It was awesome, but I worked some muscles I hadn't been working apparently because I was sore. Although my hamstrings felt pretty good. So I was like, oh, I've been working those a lot. And my glutes.
And surprisingly, my back did not hurt.
Oh, yeah, the whole time.
Yeah, I thought twisting in all these different ways, my back was going to be crushed, but it was fine.
Yeah, mine, I was pain-free. My traps hurt. Oof, but...
So I first got introduced to kettlebells probably back in 2011. And I think I remember listening to the Tim Ferriss podcast and hearing Pavel Tatsulin talk about kettlebells.
Oh, yeah. You were all into Tim Ferriss when we first met.
Yeah. He's
4
still...
Hour Body,
he's still
4 Hour
awesome.
Chef, 4 Hour. You saw those books.
One of my clients shared a ski lift with him this past winter. And they were like chilling on a ski lift for 10 minutes. And
they recognized him right away?
Yeah, they recognized him right away. I mean, even in ski goggles, it's pretty tough. But
wow.
Yeah, they recognized him. They were like, whoa. Yeah,
so how did you
turned out he's a cool guy.
Yeah, so how did you get into them? Because when we first met, they were probably just new, and then
they were just laying around the gym, and no one was using them. And it wasn't my gym. This is back at Health Tracks, and what was going on was I had just torn my hamstring basically off the bone, and I had spent probably a year trying to recover and gain back speed, and I was doing all of the classic hamstring rehab stuff, improving my lifts, doing squats, doing things like that. But I was still slow. And this was like a year, maybe a year and a half, 2 years. And, maybe some of my teammates will say I'm still slow, but whatever. But I just did not get back that speed and that explosiveness that I was used to prior to injuring my hamstring. And kettlebells were the tool that got me there. And part of it is because when you use kettlebells and when you actually do swings, you are moving the weight fast and explosively. Mm-hmm. And that was the component that was missing from my training. I started doing kettlebell swings. I started doing cleans and snatches and things like that. And all of a sudden, that connectedness with my body, being able to sprint, getting that power back, I could feel when I was running that I was able to, dial up or dial back the speed when I wanted to and be able to accelerate even mid-run.
Yeah. So tell us about, because kettlebell swing is probably the most common thing people have heard about doing, like the main exercise people know to do with kettlebells might be the only thing. That's actually not working your shoulders and arms primarily. Right. So tell us what is that really hitting?
Yeah.
The swing?
So if you've seen people do kettlebell swings in the gym and they're lifting the kettlebell all the way over their head, well, actually just probably...
But even to their shoulders.
8 out of 10 times you see anyone doing a swing, it's probably not right.
Right.
Because they're probably lifting the kettlebell with their arms. They're not driving it off of their hips, because really at the heart of it, the kettlebell swing is a horizontal explosive hip hinge pattern. And so we're driving that weight off of our hips, and then the kettlebell just floats up via how much drive you had from your hips. And then as it's coming back down, one of the things that I love from this weekend, they said, you're playing chicken with your zipper. So your hands are playing chicken with your zipper as you're bringing the weight back down. And then you let the bell pull you back through into that deadlift position or into that hip hinge position. And then you're driving it back up. So when the bell's coming through, you're getting an eccentric load to your hamstrings and glutes. And another way of saying that is you're using the stretch reflex, because when we want to jump, you never just jump straight up. You always bend over first and then jump. And what that's doing is that's engaging the stretch reflex in your posterior chain and then allowing you to propel yourself up. So you're doing that with the kettlebell swing, and you're doing it fast, and you're loading it heavier and heavier over time so that you're building more and more explosive potential and more power over time.
Yeah. So the kettlebell swing and the deadlift are probably the two biggest exercises that people get wrong in the gym.
Yeah.
We see.
I mean, most people are doing, if you tell people, do a deadlift, deadlifts, honestly, they sort of fit on all ends of the spectrum. So, you will get people, power lifters, they're doing more of a conventional deadlift. They're getting their knees forward. So they are using a little bit more of that anterior chain. If you tell someone to do a true RDL or Romanian style deadlift, then they're going to, more likely keep their hips high, have their shin angles more vertical, and have the knees bend back to move the hips back, torso's folding over. And in that case, you are going to be loading more of that posterior chain. And why do we want to differentiate that from the conventional style deadlift where you're combining those two motions? Is because on one end of the spectrum, we have a squat, which is shins forward, hips drop down, torso stays tall. That's loading more of the anterior chain. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have a true hip hinge where the shins stay vertical, hips move back, and torso folds over, which is loading more of the posterior chain.
That booty and the hamstrings.
Exactly. And so the conventional deadlift, or the one that a lot of power lifters are going to use, they're trying to lift the most weight possible. So they're going to combine both of those patterns. And what happens in the gym is a lot of people are doing more of the conventional style deadlift as their primary hip hinge. And therefore they're, getting weaker, or they're not utilizing that posterior chain as much as they would if they were doing strict RDLs and then more squat pattern, right? So we like to draw bright lines around both of those two movements and really do them at the margins so that then we can bring them together for more of those sort of combined motions, and we know we're strong and balanced. So anyway, that's a nice little tangent on that.
Yes. But however, so when you first personally used kettlebells, and then that translated into, obviously when we opened Chain Effect, it has been a big, you've done it with a lot of functional movement patterns, but what have been kind of your main uses with patients through your career? Yeah.
So I think the main things are, I'll say, we lift the trap bar, we'll do different exercises, we'll do barbell training, and we'll use that to really build strength. And then the kettlebell, and we do some of this now since we have the sensor to do more velocity-based training. But prior to that, I would say that we would use the kettlebell to really train the basics of those patterns. And then we would load them up because obviously you're going to be limited by the size of the kettlebell. So as people are progressing in their strength, you're just going to run out of big enough kettlebells for everybody.
Yeah.
And so then we're going to transition to more of the hex bar. Maybe we'll transition to more of the barbell. But then so that's building more of that strength. When we want to add power, we need to add speed to that movement. And so that's where the kettlebell really shines, is we're able to, with the arc of that swing, add a lot of speed to that motion. And then speed and strength equal power. So
a lot of people tend to make fun of the kettlebells, I feel like, who haven't used them before. They look scary, but also people think you're just waving them around like they're light, weights. Like, ooh, let me do some magic tricks.
So or you're using a lot of momentum. People think that you're just swinging them around and using momentum. But if you're doing them right, every time that is moving past your midline or moving past that center of mass, you're applying that impulse to really drive the kettlebell.
So tell us about some misconceptions.
Yeah. So I think some of the biggest misconceptions, and they reference this in the course, I thought they did a beautiful job of talking about some of this, is that, people think that a lot of people, when they think about their sport or their, fitness routine, a lot of people want to just play a sport or do an activity, whether it's running, whether it's playing tennis, riding a bike, playing a field sport. They think that they can just do that activity or that sport as their primary form of exercise, and that they're just gonna accomplish.
You can't do that. That's not enough.
Well, a lot of times you can in the youth scene. So obviously like there's a level of improvement that you're going to consistently see, especially when you're starting something new. You're going to get a lot better at it, but eventually you're going to get capped out by, your skill development in the sport is only going to follow that sort of upward trajectory for so long before you start to plateau a little bit. And then when you want to see gains in that sport, you really need to be working on your overall athleticism as it is applied to that sport. So sport specific exercises and also just general athleticism. I mean, one of the critiques on American sports right now is we do a really good job of getting people into sport at an early age. I mean, obviously, if you have access to sport, we do a good job of getting people playing, doing lots of hours, 10,000 hours of soccer, but we don't necessarily create great athletes. And that means that we're not doing the weightlifting. We're not doing the strength building that these athletes are going to need to be well-rounded soccer players and really reach that next level.
Now, I remember in high school, I mean, I didn't play a sports team, but they did have, all the athletes would do like weightlifting, right? I mean, how often?
Yeah.
So maybe they're trying to start.
The football teams have usually been pretty good at it, but I feel like they sort of, at least when I was in high school, they had the market cornered on, weightlifting. I was in there. I remember I was so psyched because I could bench the bar, which is 45 pounds. And then by the end, my freshman year, I was able to do 95. And I was like, one day I'm going to break 100.
Wow.
And
you were real scrawny back then.
Yeah, I was super scrawny. But people were so nice and welcoming in that environment, even though the guy next to me was like squatting with 6 plates on each side. But the bar's bending over his shoulders.
But I think the focus is like practice so often and the games. And so not leaving time or not making that a priority of continuing to weightlift and train in other ways throughout the sport career. Yeah.
And I have a lot of athletes now that I see, and a lot of people are coming to me initially because something's wrong. They're in pain. They're, having a problem performing in their sport. And a lot of times that's, tennis players are notorious for this. Like some of the tennis players, the younger tennis players that I see, they're playing tennis 6 days a week. And I'm like, okay, do you lift weights? And they do, well, we do some of that, but really they're playing tennis and, getting that skill development 6 days a week. And their bodies are just, you're doing an asymmetrical sport. You're swinging the racket differently on the right and left. So these developing bodies are getting, subjected to a ton of rotational forces that are asymmetrical as they're developing. And they're never sort of going back and ironing out those asymmetries in the weight room. So I think, some of those big misconceptions are that you can just play a sport, and especially as you're older, right? You've been, maybe you played sports when you were young, and then you went to college. Maybe you played sports in college if you were lucky. Maybe you played some IM or recreational, or you were pretty active. But then you got out of college and you were psyched to get that first job, and then you sat on your butt for 40 hours a week, and you prioritized that part of your life. And then you said, oh, this isn't working for me. I'm gaining weight. I'm not who I want to be. And then you go back and you try to pick up where you left off, playing a sport, sign up for a league, sign up for a team, and then boom, you get injured. And now you're not playing a sport. You're like, well, I guess I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
When really you just needed to spend some time getting strong, getting athletic again, so that you could, go enjoy that sport. And so what I always tell people is you can't run to get in shape. And I stole this from one of our trainers way back, but you can't run to get in shape. You need to get in shape to run. You can't just go and play tennis to get in shape. You need to get in shape so that you can play tennis.
Yeah.
And embracing that mindset for me in Ultimate has really prolonged my career, and knock on wood, has added to a lot of durability over the years. I'm unfortunately I'm more likely to maybe break a bone than I am to have a soft tissue injury.
Yeah.
So
rebuilding the athleticism first. I like that.
And having, and not just doing it for, like a program, right? Like a squat program or a deadlift program, or, to get in shape for the summer. You really want to have that mindset of long-term athletic development. So the exercises that you're doing today are really building on stuff that you're going to be doing years from now.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, we talk about that a lot when we talk about health span and training in your midlife. I know you're not really in your midlife yet, but I am. And so training in my midlife so that I can really enjoy my later life and be strong and mobile and fit and be able to do the things that I imagine myself doing as an older person, like staying active, and traveling, and maybe surfing still and stuff like that. You know?
I do. It's true. Cause now that I've, over the years gotten a lot stronger and done a lot of different, exercises, strength training in the gym, more coordination, more mobility, more these powerful moves, I do feel more confident if I wanted to try a sport. I feel more confident that I'd be able to do it, do a variety, like, and at least,
you're athletic, but you're also sneaky good at sports. Like when you try
hand-eye coordination,
yes, you are. You drain them in cornhole. That is hand-eye coordination. Yeah, you are.
Okay,
you just
a game.
Yeah, and you just don't really give yourself.
But but
your attention span. Let's be real.
It's really I'm not competitive. I don't really care. But anyways, like when you gave me a surf lesson one time, that was really fun. I felt confident. I was like, I can do that.
And you got up.
And I got up and I was like, okay. And then if I wanted to go play a sport because I'm stronger and I have this experience like training my body, I just feel like, I feel better. Like I could do sports if I wanted. So go sports.
I think in this kettlebell certification was cool because some of the things they talked about were, okay, these are the things that most people think about when they think about being athletic, right? And these are some of these like primary qualities: strength, power, hypertrophy, which is like getting bigger muscles, endurance, and flexibility. You and I always like to talk about the CNS adaptation. So like building strength in your central nervous system. But the other athletic qualities that are really going on when you're doing some of these complex kettlebell movements are coordination, timing, balance, rhythm, speed, and then speed changes. So like the ability to accelerate and also decelerate. They called it in the course, braking. Like
that was really cool. Yeah. BRAKING. Like
so
braking.
That you don't BRE. Now I'm going to test my dyslexia. BREAKING.
You got it. You got it.
And so I think, so those directional changes and then rotation and the ability to control rotation. And then the thing that I thought was really cool that, when they touch on the variability of the movement, which is the odd and variable positional strength. So like, are you strong when you're doing a deadlift, or are you strong when you're sitting in the machine and you're doing like a chest press and you're sitting down and the machine is locked out so that you're able to move only in that one specific plane of movement? Or are you strong when your footing's not quite right, or someone throws you a ball and it's a little bit out to the side and you have to stabilize and reach out, or someone comes in for a slide tackle and, hits you from the side, and are you able to stay on your feet? Or you step in a hole and you're falling down to the side.
Yeah.
Are you able to protect yourself?
But even that rotation and the directional, like a tennis racket, swinging a tennis racket, swinging a baseball, and dribbling basketball and stuff between your legs. Like we did so many things that I could see it correlating directly to that sport. And it's like, you're using your body. You can't really do that with big gym equipment.
Well, and that's the thing too. I think a lot of people think when they hear functional movement patterns or functional training, everyone goes to like lifting grocery bags and like carrying grocery bags into the car, or like, picking up the laundry, like, but really it doesn't need to be these activities of daily living or these household tasks. Functional training is basically teaching your body to do the movements that it was designed to do so that you can expand. And this is what I love that they talked about this. You can expand the circle of comfortable movement that you're able to do. So you think about like someone who doesn't move a lot, their circle of things that are comfortable and pain-free might be pretty small. So they're able to walk, they're able to get up and down from chairs, they're able to do little bitty things. But they're not able to jump. They're not able to run. I mean, there's these crazy statistics about people over 30 and ever sprinting again. Like a lot of people just never sprint past 30 ever, which is crazy.
Just kidding.
No, you sprint.
I did with you.
Yeah.
I did some sprints with you.
Yeah, we do those hill sprints. Yeah. But I think, just having that, being comfortable expanding that circle of movement means that not only are you going to be more willing to participate in different things, the things that come at you, like someone invites you to go do something and you're like, yeah, I'll go do that. And then all of a sudden you're participating in a brand new activity that otherwise, if your circle was really small, you'd say, no, I can't do that. And so your participation, your whole life sort of expands and what you have access to.
Well, it's scary to think about, like, with our health, with our lifespan getting longer and longer. If we're living to be 100, let's say, and you're not sprinting past 30, that's kind of scary to think about. Like, what are all these things that you're no longer going to do? Yeah.
So more than 2/3 of your life.
You could if you train.
Exactly.
You could if you if you do these things, but it's true. And people stick with what they're comfortable with.
Yeah.
So
someone brought that up. One of my captains brought that up after, we got second at nationals a couple weeks ago. And one of my captains brought that up, and he was, almost like in tears talking about the fact that, so many people in this world don't sprint past 30. And that's kind of where I thought about, or that's where that was first brought to my attention. And, it's so true. And it is such an emotional thing that, we get to do that because we're playing this sport, but, other people should do that because it is just such a freeing thing. And that's what we're talking about with these different movements is, training to be athletic, and you can be athletic at any age. So I thought that was such
functional. I mean, you should sprint occasionally in case there's an emergency where you need to sprint, like sprint to your kid who's running in the middle of the road or something.
So another great thing that they really reinforced at this course, and this is something that, you talked about it in the beginning when you said like the kettlebells are sitting there on the floor and they kind of look scary. I remember when I first saw them, I thought the same thing. I was like, ooh, I don't want to hurt myself with those things. They look like, swinging them around.
It's going to break my wrist.
I'm definitely going to hurt myself. I'm going to hurt my back. Right.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think, up until this weekend, I really feel like I've had sort of a narrow view about what's possible with kettlebells and really staying in those sort of normal planes of motion. And what was so cool about this course was them showing us that, no, you can move the kettlebell inside your leg, outside your leg.
Yeah, it was
in
so
a kickstand.
Cool.
You can do
it can be rhythmic. It can be side to side. It can
through
be
your legs.
You can do two side to side. You can do the kickstand position,
right?
Lateral lunge side to side while you're moving the kettlebells through your legs. You can do figure 8 and circles around your legs.
We were doing these things they call swangs, where you're literally swinging the weight directly out to the side. So the normal kettlebell swing is sort of front to back. This was side to side, and I'd never done that.
Yeah, and kneeling too, like all those kneeling things where you're swinging while you're kneeling.
So I used that today with 2 different athletes. And the cool thing about that, and when they first said, okay, we're going to do swings and half kneeling, I was like, well, what is this for? But when, we started thinking about it a little bit more, when you're in that half kneeling position, you take the hamstrings out of the equation because the knee is bent and the hamstring is in a shortened position.
She said, so you're using your glute a lot more.
Exactly. So you're using almost all glute. So what I did today with a couple different athletes was we did deadlifts, hex bar deadlifts, and then I had them do Nordics, which is more isolated hamstring work. And then I got them down in that half kneeling position. And then I did those kettlebell swings in half kneeling. So then we're getting the combined motion of the hex bar deadlift. Then we're isolating the hamstrings. Then we're isolating the glutes, and then back to the deadlift. And so we were rotating that, increasing the weight each time. And it was an incredible workout. People were like, oh my gosh, like I'm feeling my glutes in ways that I really hadn't in other ways, because you really are isolating that.
Yeah.
So I thought that was so cool. And it kind of brings us to the point of what they were talking about with variation and variability. And so when we were talking about, doing things like one way, I remember in the intro video, Clifton was talking about a blacksmith. And we would think that an expert blacksmith might be hammering the metal with the exact same path over and over and over again. But that is not a demonstration of expertise. Expertise would be he's able to hit it, straight on, from the side, from the other side, across his body, around his head, all these different ways, because he has the motor control to do what he's trying to do. So I think they termed athleticism as moving well intentionally.
Yeah.
So moving how you want to well, right? And so that idea of variation and variability means that, there's variation in different ways that we're going to do these different exercises. And then there's variability when in the exercise, because if you're stepping to the side and moving in these different ways and moving your feet, you are changing. You're not going to step in the same place every single time.
Yeah.
Like if you were doing, again, back to that chest press, you're moving the weight in the same plane over and over again if you're strapped into that machine. That's not increasing your variability, which is going to increase the different ways that you're able to move. I thought that was just such a great example of why we want to do these different movements.
Yeah. And you can also even your grip, the way you're gripping things. There's a lot of variability in, thumb back, pinky back, rotation, then it rotates your arm and gets your shoulder into it and everything. And you could choose which way, either what was more comfortable or what you were trying to target a little bit more.
Exactly.
And I liked how the instructors were not, sometimes we'd have nitpicky questions like, should my hand be here? And they're like,
well, it depends.
It depends. What are you trying to do?
Exactly. So I think that I was sort of dogmatic in the way of approaching things like, what's right and what's wrong. And coming out of this course, I'm much more free to think about okay, that, this is right when I'm trying to do this, and this is right when I'm trying to do this, and this is not wrong, but maybe not optimal, which is another thing that I really enjoyed was how they discussed, specificity and complexity. So if they were talking about, okay, we're going to target the hamstrings. The best exercise to target the hamstrings is a hamstring curl. It's the most specific for the hamstrings. It's not the most complex exercise. It's not actually even that functional because we rarely are just going to use the hamstring in isolation.
Right.
Does it have a place in a program? Absolutely. But should it be the only thing you do if you're trying to strengthen your hamstrings or rehabbing a hamstring? Absolutely not, because it's very specific, but it's not necessarily functional, and it's not how we would move athletically.
Yeah.
And so, when I was super curious about this course because I watched a video of people basically doing these dance moves with the kettlebell and these really complex chains and flows. And I was like, that looks awesome. That looks fun. And it is super fun. But that is also more complex. So therefore, it is less specific. Not wrong, but it is, not as... So I think we're always people will Google this all the time. What is the best exercise to strengthen glutes?
Yeah.
What is the best exercise to strengthen my
they want a straightforward
hamstrings,
answer.
right? And you want the straightforward answer. But all of these different things have a place, and adding... getting the baseline level of strength and adding complexity just adds that robustness and adds a lot of those athletic qualities that we were talking about a few minutes ago.
So kettlebells should be a tool in the toolbox. I mean, they were very transparent over the whole course about they're not preaching that kettlebells are the only thing that people should be using.
Yeah,
just part it's not the end all be all. It's a tool. But they are unique. They are unique because some positives are, one, they're small. So it's a great at home thing. If you don't really have a full gym, full garage that you can make a gym out of, they're small. You can get a few, and we learned that you can do so much with a few. I used to be I get kind of sick of the same moves at home with the 3 we have at home. So it's a small space footprint. They give a cardio feel. There were so many things that we do along with swings, but so many more dynamic moves that we did that across the room or side to side laterally that gave a cardio feel. So if someone doesn't like to run or doesn't like to do other cardio things to warm up, then you can just get your heart rate up and get that feel as a warm up or in the middle of your workout through these moves. And then they cover the fundamental patterns, of course, but they give that power training too. You can really level up your power.
Right. And so, you know, I think what's really cool about them is thinking about them too on both ends of the athletic spectrum, or really I would say both ends of the age spectrum. On one hand, I think they're really, you know, applicable for young kids to work with because, you know, they're small. You can just have a couple, and, you know, at least at our gym, you can't come to the gym unless you're 16. So, you know, and I remember when I turned 16, I was finally able to go to the gym as a young person. And so you have just a few kettlebells, you can really get a solid workout, and you're not necessarily like loading a ton of weight.
Right.
So for parents that are scared about, you know, stunting their kids' growth and things like that, you can really build these baseline level functional movement patterns and then start to load them. It's a great implement for speed training and all this different stuff that a lot of kids just aren't getting. They're not doing any strengthening, you know, while they're playing their sport. So I think it's really good there. And I also think it's excellent for the older populations, especially as they're getting back into a training or they're training for the first time. And, you know, we talked a lot about that like hand-eye coordination of like moving the kettlebell from hand to hand and balancing in all these different ways as the kettlebell is traveling around your body.
Yeah.
I mean, those are just so important for the older population who are scared of falls.
Yeah. And just using your brain. I know a lot of people in their 50s and 60s really want to use their brain more. Like, like
they want to just, you're not just
like,
want to do
I
Sudoku
need stuff
every
for my
morning.
brain. Yeah. They might want to do more than crossword puzzles and, you know, reading and stuff. And so that's what I took away from it. One of the things that I thought it was so cool, I could see y'all using it with your, you know, midlife, older population who is getting back and trying to be stronger than ever, but also using their brain.
Right.
Because it was a lot. It kind of reminded me of when I went back to Irish dance lessons a little bit in my adult years, and it was a totally I could not pick up any of the steps. I could not remember
choreography.
The choreography. Like I could not, I was so slow. I could not remember it. I was like, God, when you're young, you can just learn things so quickly. Yeah. But you have to build it. You have to work on it. And so I think these are a great way to learn chains or learn combos or even do, you know, just think about the positioning and use your brain while you're working out.
And really, you know, that just comes back to making it fun, right? Because I think with so many of these things that the training, the information is out there, but, you know, making it an experience where it's fun and you're learning all these different things and putting it together, it just keeps your workout fresh. And, you know, I think I'm really excited to continue to use it with a lot of my clients. I think the course was excellent. I would definitely recommend it.
Definitely. My goal is to, like I told you, not do any normal kettlebell swings for like the next month. So I can practice all these variations and make it more fun. It does add interest to your workouts if you're doing the same thing over and over.
So if you're interested in, you know, learning more about the course, obviously their website is getppsc.com. Clifton Harsky was my contact for the course. Really nice guy. And, you know, we hosted this at our gym. It was, you know, it was very good. And if you have any questions for us or want to do some kettlebell training, if you're in Raleigh or the Triangle, or even if you just have some questions about, you know, different things that you could add to your training, please contact us, Taylor at chaineffect.us and Caroline at chaineffect.us. And we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening.